As someone who was struggling with a lot of anxiety in my early to mid 20s, making friends at this time was always something I had mixed feelings about. On one hand, there were definitely moments where I felt lonely and I wanted genuine connection with other people. But then, due to my high levels of social anxiety and my past negative experience with friends during high school, there were other times where having friends was the last thing I wanted to deal with. This video is going to be a mix of how I made friends while struggling with social anxiety, tips on making friends, and my struggles with friendships in the past. So it's a little all over the place, but depending on where you're at, my hope is that you can find something useful in this video that you can use to help better your journey. So I hope you enjoy. So fast forward to when I eventually began to work on myself. I began to heal and reflect back on my life and, working on my anxiety and challenging certain core beliefs, specifically my negative beliefs about friends. And so eventually those beliefs began to shift. And so I asked myself things like, is it really true that all friendships become toxic eventually? Could you yourself have played a role in the toxicity? Did you bring your true self forward in these friendships? Or was it just a persona that you created to conceal your insecurities? By the way, this was a big one for me. Is it really true that having friends causes more stress than benefits? Or statements like, I don't need friends, I'm better off on my own, ultimately true? Do you really have no pleasant memories of the time you spent with your friends? Do you really want to move forward through this life without having any friends? So, what happened after I asked these questions? Well, when I really took the time and thought about it, I did, in fact, have some great moments and memories with my friends. And though these friendships did eventually become destructive and toxic, the narrative I was spinning in my head was not true. I was making it worse than it was because of the pain that I genuinely experienced in these friendships. But holding this narrative is what kept me rigid and stuck in my beliefs. Not all my friends were as toxic as others. Also, I played a role at times in the toxicity. There's a big part of me that didn't want to see or admit to that. We were all struggling with some degree of pain or stress or anxiety at the time, which is probably what attracted us to each other to begin with. The truth was, I did want friendships. I just wanted them to be healthier. And a big part of that started with me and how I treated myself. Learning about healthy boundaries, learning how to open up more authentically in friendships, bringing my true self forward rather than a persona, and being okay with the possibility that my true self might not vibe with everyone and not make that mean something negative about myself. Also, it was a journey of learning how to trust myself again. That was a big one for me. At the time when all this was happening, I started seeing a therapist. And one of the things I loved about her is that she used exposure therapy techniques to help me make friends and meet people. And she would give me these assignments. And I love a therapist who will give you homework, essentially, and then check up on how you did the following session. And because my social anxiety was still very prevalent at this time, she would tell me things like, go to the mall, maybe buy a few things for yourself. And if the opportunity comes up, say hi to a couple people. That's it, just minimal interaction. Or ask a store clerk a question about a product or a recommendation, going a little bit beyond just buying my item and leaving. So essentially, it was having me do these little things that would cause me to be more present when I was in public situations. Sometimes it would be something like go to a restaurant you like and order some food to go, and maybe spark a conversation with the host or hostess. Even if it was just cheesy small talk, it was just getting me used to interacting with people. So, small things, but for someone who's dealing with social anxiety, very daunting and challenging in the beginning. Also, at this time, I had started working for the first time in years. It was a cashier job at a health food store. And let me tell you, cashier and social anxiety just don't mix. There were some terrifying moments, to say the least, and I'll have to talk about that in another video. But the point was, I was working again, so I was around people. But yeah, because I started working, it was the perfect place to meet people, mainly coworkers, and a great place to begin implementing these same exposure therapy techniques. And I remember my therapist telling me, if you're invited out to hang out with some coworkers, I want you to say yes. And I was invited out. And I said yes. And I went more than once. And I had a lot of fun times and I had a lot of not so fun times. It was mostly bar hopping and a lot of drunken nights. But most importantly, I was trying new things for the first time. I was experimenting. I was getting my feet wet. I was really learning about myself and about the type of people that I genuinely enjoyed being around, as well as the type of people I wanted to steer clear of. For instance, I learned that the club and bar scene was genuinely just not my vibe. Not because of my social anxiety, which is what I previously thought, but because I sincerely enjoyed a more laid back atmosphere. And don't get me wrong, I definitely had some good times at these places, and I still do to an extent. I still will go. But generally speaking, the amount of chaos and noise that can occur at a bar or a club is just not for me. My ideal hangout situation is going out to dinner with friends or hanging out with some friends around a fire with some music, going out into nature, having a movie night, a more chill atmosphere to say the least. All this I slowly learned about myself as time went on. And the more I worked on myself, the more comfortable I felt being myself around others. The better my friend group became over time. People were beginning to like me for me and not some persona that I created that I was hoping people would accept. I didn't realize how much anxiety I was creating by pretending to be someone I wasn't, not to mention all the stress with having to deal with all that. So I wanted to share some tips and some things that I've learned throughout my journey of friendship and becoming a better friend as well. Be yourself as much as possible. I say as much as possible because I know everyone's at a different place in their life. If you're currently dealing with high levels of depression or anxiety, or you're in some other dark place, do what you can. On the other hand, if you've been working on yourself and you're feeling a little bit more confident, maybe it's time to start to bring a little bit more of your authentic self forward in your daily interactions. But regardless of where you're at, the more authentic you can be, the more your true self you can bring forward, the better. So do what you can. Be a little picky with who you allow into your life. Pay attention to the little things that rub you the wrong way or that just may feel off about a certain person. This doesn't mean you have to cut that person off if you sense something, but definitely trust your instincts and pay attention. Don't get into the mindset that says, hey, I need to take what I can get. And if this person's taking the time to interact with me, then I need to go for it because this is the only chance I got. There were definitely times in my life that I felt that kind of pressure, and I'm so glad that I've since learned not to give into it. If most of your interaction with people is currently online, then awesome. That's a great place to meet people with like-minded interests. I mean, you got forums, video games, social media, etc. Make no mistake, I would take good online friends over toxic in-person real-life friends any day. Now, I do think that eventually it's amazing to have real life friends that you can hang out with, but try not to feel pressure or to beat yourself up if you're not currently there. That's something I did to myself way too much back in the day. And yes, online does have its share of toxic culture. I think we all know that, but so does real life. So use your discernment, but that doesn't mean that the connections you have online are not genuine. They are limited to an extent, but there are people out there who don't have any connection at all. So feel grateful for what you got. Now, if you're starting to venture out of your comfort zone a little and you're starting to work on your anxiety, then I recommend seeking out events and gatherings that you're genuinely interested in. Conventions, festivals, if you're into food truck events. This is a great way to meet like-minded people. Now, I started out with going out to bars with coworkers, and don't get me wrong, I had some fun, but there were a lot of nights that weren't that fun. When I started to go to events that I actually was into, that I actually enjoyed, I had more fun, naturally, and it was easier to meet and talk with people. So you got to get out there, but it doesn't have to be random. You could be strategic and seek out places that you genuinely have a passion and appreciation for. You don't have to go bar hopping and club hopping to find friends if that's not your scene. But if it is, more power to you. The next one I want to talk about is school. School is another great place to find people with similar interests. Now, it can also be a terrifying place for those who are really struggling with social anxiety, but depending on where you're at with anxiety and everything, school can be a great option. Some of my best friends to this day are the ones that I met in massage school. We were all passionate about massage and natural ways of healing, and so naturally we gravitated towards each other. The last tip is very simple and a little cheesy, but I wanted to mention it because it really works, especially for those who feel very awkward in public and just find it very hard and uncomfortable starting conversations and interacting with people. So if you're at that stage, this one's for you. Wear t-shirts. Wear t-shirts of your favorite bands, movies, art, etc. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone stop me on the street and say, "Oh my God, I love your shirt," or "Oh my God, I love that band." It feels good because it's basically a compliment to you. Now, will this result in a deep friendship forming? Maybe not, probably not. But at the very least, you're getting some practice, you'll get a compliment, and you might get a cool little conversation with a perfect stranger. Because these people are going to be excited that you know their favorite movie, that you know this band that very few others know about. So that's another tip. The friend group I have today is something I could have never imagined having in the past. I didn't know it was possible to have such genuine connections. I didn't know it was possible to have friends that felt like family. I didn't know it was possible to have friends that I can completely open up to, who make me feel heard, who didn't judge me, and that who could hold space for whatever I was going through. My friends today genuinely have my back and my best interests at heart. And they're not afraid to tell me if I'm messing up or going down the wrong path. Some of my most transformational experiences and much of my growth has been a direct result of having amazing friends in my life. And through the amazing friendships I have today, I've also learned how to become a better friend myself. I've learned how to listen better. I've learned how to judge less. I've learned how to offer advice that's in the best interests of my friends without my own hidden attachments or insecurities. I'm still getting better at calling my friends back in a timely manner. That's something I've always struggled with, but I'm getting better at that too. As long as I'm conscious of that, it's okay. At least that's what I tell myself. Here's what I want to leave you with. Deep, meaningful connection is beautiful. The support, the connections, the family aspect, the shared experiences are what make life worth living. Try to get that in some way, through friends, family, pets, or just for yourself. If you're struggling with making friends, don't give up. There's someone out there just as weird as you, just as geeky about the same things that you're into, waiting to find you, I promise. So keep going, you're doing great. Take care, guys.